Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Ask the Doctor Health Call, where we're going to be talking about preventing holiday colds and flu. We wanted to prevent that because we want to enjoy holiday to the fullest. And today we have the amazing Dr. Bob to share his over 30 years of experience with us once again. And welcome, Dr. Bob.
Well, thank you always, Eloisa. It's a beautiful day, and it's always a great day to be healthy.
Absolutely. Dr. Bob, actually, I know that you have a busy day, so let's get started very fast because I know you have a busy day. I would love to know from you, why is it so common, cold and flu, to take a toll on people at this time of the year?
Well, I tell people that the top enemies of the immune system are stress and sugar. And both of those seem to be way higher than they should be at this time of year. Sugar, in the US, we have a holiday called Halloween. I don't know if they celebrate that all over the world or not, but at any rate, kids go door to door in costumes. They call them trick-or-treating. They start eating a lot of candy. Adults tend to eat the candy. We start holiday parties. We go into Thanksgiving. Everybody's sharing apple pie and good stuff like that. But you know what? You can have too much of things. And when you get that sugar, that starts to suppress the immune system. But then we move a step forward. And sadly, holidays are pretty stressful for a lot of people. People are maybe they're taking inventory of their year and they're not where they wanted to be. And sometimes they're a little concerned about finances and can they afford to have a great Christmas with their family and on and on. And then let's face it, changes of season can be stressful as well. There's going to be less daylight hours, at least in the northern hemisphere, more in the southern, right? And we might have people from Africa or Australia here, so they're kind of different than us. But nonetheless, less sunlight, less vitamin D. Vitamin D is good for the immune system, but it's essentially the perfect storm. If people don't really stay proactive, they can get run down. Their immune system can get run down, and next thing you know, they get a cold or flu.
And how much of a risk is that flu can present on people with weakened immune system?
Well, especially the really, really vulnerable, like the elderly. It was years ago that there was a medical doctor that said this. Basically the flu is the friend of the dying man, because it'll actually accelerate the process. And so we see that those people that are really vulnerable, they can have a challenge. Now, with most flus, it was the elderly and the very young that could have a problem. Now, this most recent one that was around the world, it wasn't a problem for the young, but it could have been a problem for the very old. And now that more data is coming around, they come to realize that flu was around August of September of 2019. Plenty of people had it. They didn't even have any symptoms. Now they're testing blood banks and they're coming to the conclusion, wow, we really overestimated this. Yeah, it was a significant flu for the old and frail, but for the rest of us, probably not that big a deal.
Yeah, and I think many people stress over the possibility of getting sick, the possibility of this virus and everything else. My mom being one of them, she's always worried about that. And I told her already, I said, your stress is actually damaging your immune system. So how does that happen? How does stress impact immune system?
Well, what's so fascinating is, the body has something that's been well documented called the fight or flight response. And so when people are in a very threatening circumstance, their body's going to put all of its resources into just simply fighting or fleeing. So digestion shuts down, sexual function shuts down, cellular repair shuts down, and immune system shuts down. That's somewhat of a luxury. And, if you stay in fight or flight, if you stay stressed all the time, then you have a suppressed immune system. We've done different videos on the perfect storm of cancer. And I'm going to just say this because it's worth repeating again and again. I was at a cancer lecture 35 years ago, and a PhD researcher walked into a group of doctors and he asked the question, how does a hurricane start? We were all looking at each other going, are we in the right lecture? What's this guy asking this for? And the answer he wanted was, a hurricane starts when conditions are just right. How does a tornado start? When conditions are just right. How does cancer start? When the conditions are just right. And those conditions are low oxygen, low nutrients, high acid, chronic inflammation. And here's a critical one, and immune suppression, usually secondary to chronic distress. Now, they have a hard time quantifying that, but as they're starting to look into it deeper, they can see that is nearly universal. Someone had a pretty significant stressor that they weren't able to get past, and then that chronic immune suppression ultimately led to cancer. So, if you get a cold or a flu as a wake-up call that maybe you're stressed and not doing things right, that could be a gentle wake-up call. Cancer is not a very gentle wake-up call. So we certainly want to prevent that in everybody that we possibly can prevent it in.
Yeah, I know that's not a topic and we don't need to go much into detail about that, but it really was a wake-up call for me when I heard you saying that it's a very small percentage that is genetic when it's about cancer. It's a lot more related to lifestyle and the choices that you make daily and the things that you decide to make a practice into your daily life that can actually have a bigger impact on it. So I think I don't like when, I think it's out of ignorance as well, because I was ignorant for a long time on that subject, to think that my grandmother passed from breast cancer, my grandfather passed from lung cancer. So due to that, I will most likely die with cancer as well. So I just would like to just say that it was a big wake-up call for me to really look into my lifestyle.
We want you around for a long, long time. Our world is definitely better with you in it.
I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon. But Dr. Bob, another thing that I know Eric doesn't stress enough, he's always talking about the benefit of cold exposure. I don't like it. I really, I'm grateful, very grateful for my warm shower every day, but I cannot deny that there is a lot of science behind the benefits of cold exposure. Could you explain a little bit more about how this could impact your, because it kind of feels kind of counterintuitive if I'm going to think about it, to like have cold exposure to prevent cold and flus, but how would that work?
Well, it's basically forcing your body to adapt, and so fascinating enough, my first cold plunge was in Sweden in the 1990s, and Sweden is as far north as Alaska. For people in this part of the world don't know that that's north and that's cold. And, the person that was sponsoring my seminar said, look, we have a tradition here in Sweden called the cold plunge. We're going to sit in a, 180-degree sauna, get real warm, and then we're going to jump into a freezing cold lake. And I thought, okay, I'm up for anything once, well, it turns out we did 3 cold plunges on that particular day. And I felt so invigorated. Having plenty of energy has never been an issue for me. I feel very blessed that I've had the lifestyle choices that gives me, energy to run circles around most people. But that particular day, I felt so alive, so in tune, so focused, so amazing. And so, luckily it was the fall of the year. Here in Texas, it's hard to take a cold shower, but I started taking cold showers. Now, then over the last, 15 years, I've had a really nice outdoor pool and I swim every day. And, now on the Celsius scale, the water's down to less than 10 degrees, and the air is about the same. So I get a legitimate cold plunge and I swim every day. But what it does is it shocks the body into doing a lot of different things. And there's even something called heat shock proteins, and those are actually increased. And these are proteins that are helpful to immune function, especially helpful for killing cancer. And, there are people that have done experiments with cold that have turned down very significant chronic illness. And if people want to see who the guru of that is these days, it's a guy named Wim Hof, who, he started doing cold plunges and something called fire breathing. He lost his wife. And it was very tragic. And so he went to the Himalayas to try to find himself. And he found this group of monks where they could breathe and meditate in a certain way that they could go outside in the snow, shirtless, and melt snow around them. And he said, well, I want to practice that. And so he's got these cold records where he swims in the Arctic Sea, wearing nothing but a Speedo for 2 hours and doesn't have hypothermia. Went up Mount Kilimanjaro shirtless and took people that were critically ill. And many of them had remission after that. And even ran the Antarctic Marathon, no shirt and a pair of shorts, minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, which is close to minus 30 Celsius as well, and no hypothermia. So humans are pretty amazing. If we learn to master that, there's a lot of things in our life we can do.
It's incredible. It really is. Like I saw like a few videos of him. I just want to point it out. People that are having problem with Instagram, that is echoing. I apologize. I have to still figure out how that works, but I have on our Reishi Warriors stories, the link that goes straight to our Zoom call. If you just want to pop to the Zoom to be able to not have the echo, I apologize, but I will sort that out. Okay. But moving on, Dr. Bob, there is like this, now we're going to be approaching a time of the year as well, where we have more parties, we're going to have more interaction, social interaction with others. What type of activities would you actually ask people to minimize if they want to prevent getting the flu and the cold?
Well, very, very simply, don't binge on junk. Don't overstress. Don't overdo alcohol. In fact, I had a patient in this morning that, he had been doing pretty good this year. He went to a holiday party, had way too much alcohol, and it affected his system like never before. He actually woke up with a racing heart, felt like his heart was going to beat out of his chest. And he said, what the heck's going on? Well, you'd be surprised at what you can deplete in a single episode of binge drinking. And in his case, it created an unstable environment around his heart. And, hopefully we stabilize that quick. And I've seen this type of thing before, and we do. I tell people bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. And our favorite herb, Reishi, also known as Ganoderma, you do that every waking hour, you you get lots of good things going in your system. And that's part of what we attempt to do. But prevention trumps cure. This is ancient wisdom. And so I tell people, look, we want you to go to holiday parties. We want you to have a good time, but we don't want you to pay too big a price. So if you plan on eating more, a couple things. One, I like to encourage people, a very simple, practical strategy. Eat almost to the point of overeating really good salads before a holiday party. So you come up with your stomach full of actually good things. Know when to say when it comes to alcohol, and step up your training. If you know you're going to have dessert, well, for most people, even a small dessert will take an extra hour of intense training to match those calories.
Oh, don't tell me that, Dr. Bob.
If people really understood what it took, well, I think you're doing pretty good in that department. But, you come to realize that it's a pretty big metabolic price to pay to have a good piece of chocolate cake. Now, can you have a better piece of chocolate cake? You could. You could have a flourless chocolate. You could have a part of it. And you could actually make sure you exercise before the party, and all those things can be helpful. But planning ahead can make a big difference. So I want people to enjoy everything as much as possible, but understand everything has a price to pay, and we want to minimize the price.
Fantastic. Actually, you already answered my next question, because it was like, what should I increase to prevent flus and colds? And I think you already answered. So we can just skip to the next one, which is about the social interaction as well. Like, because we were saying about how many people stress over the possibility or the fear of getting sick. So then they don't go to parties, they don't go to events where they can actually socialize. Is it having this type of event or this type of interaction good actually for the immune system in some way? Or would you say maybe yes, don't do too much?
Oh, no, that's an absolute. There's this thing that they call herd immunity. And so, we even have it now with this most recent virus. But what should happen whenever there's something that seems to be rough on the entire, let's call it the herd, humanity, the strongest people kind of owe it to be exposed to this, to actually get it and to learn to fight it. And, so there's probably things in science that we don't understand yet, but there seems to be a tipping point when a certain amount of the population has a certain infection, suddenly it just disappears and doesn't have any impact on anybody anymore. But I tell people that the very first Nobel Prize in medicine was on something called convalescent plasma. Now, that's a term that may not be similar. Plasma is the liquid portion of blood. And what they found around 1902 was the year there was a really bad flu going around. And this researcher had the bright idea, look, why don't I take the blood from people that had the flu, separate out the cells, take out the red cells, the white cells, only put the liquid part back in, and let's see what happens. So even in 1902, for people that were very sick and nearly dying, they didn't have anywhere near the medical advances they have now. They had about an 80% recovery rate. So picture by March of 2020, with this most recent virus, they did 2 studies on convalescent plasma. One was published in New England Journal of Medicine, the other Proceeds National Academy of Science, and they both had a 100% cure rate. So at that point in time, I said, my parents are in the 80s. I'm going to go get this virus. And if my parents see my plasma, I'll get on a plane and I'll go to Wisconsin and I'll give it to them. Well, fast forward, all these lockdowns prevented herd immunity. And there's plenty of world-renowned immunologists that said if we just protected the very vulnerable, that would be very sick senior citizens in the bottom 10% of wellness for people over 80, and people that were immune compromised, maybe from cancer therapies. If we just predicted those and let the rest of society get it, it would have been gone within about a month. It's pretty hard to argue with that, and so hopefully we've learned the lesson from there. But here's a simple thing. If healthy people are exposed to a virus, suddenly that helps the entire herd to beat it. And so I'm a big fan of community gatherings, but let's face it, if you feel vulnerable, well, just that worry makes you more vulnerable. So maybe you do want to protect yourself at that point, but worry doesn't serve us at all. But good health practices do, that's for sure.
For sure. Yes. And talking about practices and strategies, what would be your strategy, easy and simple, for a person to start to do today to prevent?
Well, I was interestingly enough listening to maybe the same webinar that you listened to yesterday. Eric Worre, one of our mentors, was talking about a documentary called Unstuck. And they said, the first thing you want to do is actually take care of your physical being. And by eating right, moving right, sleeping right. Well, how many people do that right? There's very few people. We're in a sleep-deprived world. We're in a junk food world. We're in a processed food world. We're in a nutrient-deprived world. And then we're in a lazy world. People don't move around very much. If we can master those very simple basics, all of those are critical to all of life. Now, I'm a big fan of 7. So, for decades, I've taught doctors around the world the Magnificent 7. You've got to eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right every day. But certainly if we just take the big 3, eat, move, sleep, that'll get people where they need to go. So when it comes to eating, simple rule, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. That applies to our immune system, our body composition, everything else. Move every joint, every day, every range of motion in a way that honors your body goals. And sleep, Anders Ericsson wrote a book called Peak. He studied the best of the best in multiple fields, and he found out the best of the best sleep about 8.6 hours a night. So how many people get that? Not enough. But
Not enough.
If we did, we'd be a lot better for it.
Yeah. And do you know what? I remember growing up, there was so much knowledge that my grandmother carried from her family and my ancestors. And my grandmother always had something to say. If we were sick in whatever it was, she always had something. She was a woman that was so wise. But I remember that one thing that she did was chicken noodle soup. Mm-hmm. That is like, it's connected. If I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, my body asks for chicken noodle soups. Is there anything actually that suggests that this small home remedy actually help people? Like you say, like medicine is not food is not alternative medicine. Food is medicine.
Yeah, well, and so chicken noodle soup is a time-tested remedy, and they even call it Jewish penicillin. It has something within it. Now, the last time I looked that up, they hadn't identified the specific substance, but that's what we tend to do in medicine. We say, what is the one thing about it? Well, maybe it's not one thing. Maybe it's actually everything about it. And so if this is a time-tested remedy, and it has been that, and if you look at natural medicine's been around since humanity. Now, interestingly enough, there's a lot of archaeological evidence that the women were actually the medicine women of the tribe. Now, sometimes they were shaman, but women had a lot to do with this herbal knowledge that they passed through the multiple generations to keep humanity safe. And, we want to honor all of our women. I tend to quote Abe Lincoln on Mother's Day. I always call my mom and I say, Abe Lincoln said this: all that I am, all that I'll ever be, I owe to my mother. In reality is we can all say that. And so, when we have these mothers that have specialized in keeping the tribe healthy, how beautiful. And it sounds like your grandmother was one of those. So how fun.
Yeah. No, she was a wonderful woman and very knowledgeable, didn't trust medicine. She knew that, no, not going to take this, make this tea, mix with this thing, with this leaf, and there we go. We go for it. Love it. But you know what, Dr. Bob, I was watching for the second time The Fantastic Fungi, right? I'm fascinated with the documentary. And if you haven't watched it yet, guys, highly recommend. It is amazing. I was even talking to the guys here before we started the call, but there was a part there, and I'm going to try to quote what I was saying more or less about the power of medicinal mushroom and what is believed to do. So basically what the mushroom does is that it produces different enzymes that kill off bacteria, virus, microbes, everything that competes for its food, right? Mm-hmm. So when it comes to penicillin, that's exactly what it does. It produces enzymes that are going to kill off the bacteria that's in your body. That's antibiotics in itself. But the East Asia medicine, like Korea, Japan, and China, has been used medicinal mushroom for thousands of years. It's documented, used for thousands of years. And what's believed is that it goes to your body and it enhances and protects your defensive mechanism. So it helps you, right? And this is actually filling the gap that Western medicine actually sometimes voids, because they are looking for the disease agent and they try to kill the disease, and for that reason with that they forget to actually look after the healthy part of the body and protect it. So that's why I think it's so fascinating, and that's why we're never going to be stressing from talking about reishi, because reishi is on the top of that list of the most powerful medicinal mushrooms that we have out there, and we are always talking about it. I'm taking reishi daily for the last 8 years. I cannot remember the last time that I got a flu, maybe a cold. Maybe a flu for one day, just a little bit of the nose, but I was better the next day. So I would love to hear from you as a doctor. What is so powerful about reishi when it comes to protect the body, and specific about cold and flu, because that's what we are talking today?
Sure. Well, while you mentioned fantastic fungi, so what they've found is it has molecules that together work against yeast, parasite, fungus, bacteria, and even cancer. And so when we start looking at some of this bacteria, there's a antibiotic resistant form of bacteria that's termed MRSA, MRSA, methicillin resistant Staph aureus, that kills over 100,000 people every year in US hospitals. But yet reishi has its combination of molecules that actually kill MRSA. It blocks replication of the HIV virus. And I tell people, don't take my word on this. Go to pubmed.gov, type in Ganoderma, reishi, and HIV, and you'll find these things in these good medical studies. And you might ask, well, why is medicine not utilizing these? Well, very, very simple. Medicine's a business, and businesses are to make money. And if they can't patent it, there's not much money in it, and they can't patent any molecule of nature. But if we try to look, and some people say, well, it must be the beta glucan component of the mushroom, or some people say, well, it must be this particular triterpenoid, or there's over 430 unique molecules. Which one is it? I'm not sure it's any one. It might be all 430 and the combination of the great nutrients. So, I tell people we have man's pharmacy, which is a single synthesized molecule, or we have God's pharmacy, which is hundreds of thousands of molecules that work in synergy to keep people healthy, and have done that since the beginning of time. Some of my great mentors would say, I think it's very foolish to call what we do alternative medicine, because this has been around for hundreds of thousands of years. What's the alternative is this synthesized stuff. And I think a lot of people are beginning to wake up that where there's power to it, there's also extreme limitations. So the whole conglomerate of the plant, the 430 unique molecules, help to make reishi the superfood that it is.
Yeah, and it's fantastic that we do have these as a product to be able to make available to the world, and I make it, and I think it's even more powerful because we have a mission behind it. We want to improve people's health in a way that they don't forget taking it. It's not capsules. You have the capsules options because there is people that prefer to take them, but we have them hidden inside coffee and tea. We say hidden because you don't taste it, but it's there. The magic is being happening inside of you as you drink daily. So is there, because we're going to have people watching this after the replay and everything else, so it's going to be good as well to share. Is there some deals or some promos that's going to be happening, so then people may want to buy as gifts for a loved one, the gift of health? Is there something that Organic is going to be running for these next few weeks up to Christmas?
Well, yeah, they always have a Black Friday special, which is beyond epic. Now, even this week, they had the red tea on sale, which is amazing. That has reishi and cordyceps, which is a really good blend. And they have a new coffee, which I think will be hitting Europe soon, called the Royal Blend, which is reishi, cordyceps, and lion's mane. Sure, the holiday season in this part of the world is a big shopping season, and they have something called Black Friday, and Organo's not going to miss out on that. They have some epic specials, which we're not really at liberty to say, but let's say if you really wanted to stock up on health for your family, that'd be there. And here in North America, up until the end of November, people can actually sign up to be wholesale buyers. I've shared reishi infused delicious coffees and teas for years. And when people fall in love with it, I tell them, look, there's 3 options. You can be a retail customer. I'm more than happy to sell it to you. For a small fee, you could be a wholesale buyer. And now that fee is $20.22 until the end of the month. Or if you're like me, you could get paid to consume and share this product. And that's how our wonderful partnership started, and has with many of the people I see on this Zoom. So how fun to be able to make the world better together with things that actually make a difference.
Absolutely. And I was just reading here, David saying that he drank the Royal and he was feeling focused like a samurai warrior. Oh my God, I'm so looking forward. Janelle just sent me a box and I'm so looking forward. It hasn't arrived yet, but you guys will know when it arrives, right? It's going to be all over my Instagram. There's some questions here and I have to just ask so then we can finish, right? I saw a question here. Is a cold plunge advisable for someone that has had a heart attack?
Maybe not. So there can be too much of a stressor for certain people. You want to clear that with your doctor. So, there's been plenty of people that have done, from contrast therapy to go from a sauna into a snowbank. And there's people that die every year doing that because their heart's not up to the challenge. So someone that has a heart issue, you want to move forward in a way where you're not going to shock your system like that. So could you take maybe 30 seconds of a cold shower? That'd be different than a cold plunge, or maybe even not that cold. Yeah, I think I'd work up to it, but you're going to want to clear that with your doctor, because if you're fit and healthy, it'll make you more fit and more healthy. But if you're on the edge, it could be a stressor that could take you out. And we don't want that to happen.
Absolutely not. But look how great it is to have Dr. Bob here to answer the question, because I would not know the answer myself. So thank you very much, Dr. Bob. And look, just to let you go, you have a full day. I just leave with you the last words for finishing the call.
I always like to wrap up with 4 questions. And one of my great mentors was a guy named Jim Rohn, and he led so many people to health, happiness, and success. But when he'd have some type of meeting like this, often in person back then, he would finish with 4 questions. I call them questions to ponder. So the first question is why? Why did you invest the time to be on this Zoom or Instagram today? And I will call it an investment of time. And by the way, we can't get the time back. Well, hopefully the second question is the answer to the first. Why not? Why not connect with people and products that are committed to making the world better? The third question is why not you? Someone's going to act on some of the information they received. You might avoid the holiday sugar. You might eat that salad. You might make sure that you eat, move, and sleep right. Some of you may add reishi to your daily protocol. When people add that to their coffee and tea, we're seeing life-changing changes. I guess that's a simple way to put that, with an easy habit. And the final question is why not now? So the longer you wait to act on information, the least likely you are to act on it. So I'm going to encourage you, whatever positive action you have to take from this, take it. And by the way, if you want to make our world better with us, we're expanding our team all over the globe, and we have a mission. We're going to make the world better. So with that said, I'm Dr. Bob Rakowski, absolutely knowing that we can all be happy, healthy, and successful. So in that half of the world, good night and God bless. In this part of the world, good afternoon and God bless, and especially happy, beautiful Thanksgiving to all who celebrate it.